Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to A Walk Through Time. Speaking of time, let me take you back to the beginning, at least as far as Gadsden is concerned. Who can tell me what Gadsden was originally known as? Anybody? Well, let me tell you, it was called Double Springs, and it wasn't much more than a tiny stagecoach stop along the banks of the Coosa River. Here in Gadsden, well, absolutely, I'm not from Gadsden, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. And for those of you that can't speak good English, that is New Orleans. I was born in the late 1800s, and I came to Gadsden in 1912 to be a manager for Swift & Company. That was a meat processing plant over at Fort McClellan here. And about that same time, I met and married the beautiful Miss Hazel Sturkey. And we had a son, Herbert Jr. Now, he eventually became a lawyer here in Gadsden, Alabama, but don't hold that against him, folks. He really was a good boy. Well, we eventually had 3 grandchildren. There was Lynn, there was Mary Spence, who was named after my beloved mother, and then there was Herbert III. Well, we moved away for a couple of years, but we shortly came back so that I could be the business manager for my father-in-law, Mr. Henry D. Sturkey. I did that for a while, but it wasn't long before my interest in politics really took over. I quickly began to serve on the Civil Service Board. That was in 1931, and shortly after that, 1934, I was elected to the Gadsden City Commission. And then just 4 years later, I became mayor of this great city. Well, at that time, if you know your history, the United States was going through a Great Depression. 25% of the working population had no job. Many of them lived in Hoover towns throughout the country. And times were hard. When I took over as mayor, I was advised that the situation was bleak, that I should turn the city over to a federal receiver and declare bankruptcy. But no way would I consider such a notion. So we went to work. We were determined to put this city back on a secure financial footing. And we did, partly because I was a workaholic. First one in and last one to leave every day. Well, of course, the Depression led right into World War II. Several of us saw the signs of war coming, so we worked hard to bring Camp Cyber and the Gadsden Ordnance Plant to the area. The Ordnance Plant produced over 16 million shells for the war effort, and Camp Cyber grew to over 40 miles of roadway and over 1,500 buildings, which could house over 30,000 troops if necessary. During that time, we did house over 500 POWs, 10 of which were actually Hitler's SS men. Well, the war began to wind down, and so did I. I ran for a 4th term in office, but was unsuccessful. I held office until late 1949, at which time I retired as mayor. However, my life in public service was not over. I was appointed to the Director of Territories and Price Stabilization in Washington, D.C., where I served for several years. But unfortunately, I had a string of heart attacks, and I was in the hospital for months before I could return to Gadsden. Just 12 days after returning, I was struck again, and this time I did not survive. However, the good people of Gadsden did choose to honor me by naming both Meaghan Boulevard and the Meaghan Bridge after me. Well, they dedicated the bridge on December 18, 1954, with both granddaughters, Lynn and Mary Spence, there to cut the ribbon. Mary Spence remembers that she was a little nervous to be in one of the first cars to cross that bridge, but don't you be nervous, it'll hold. Now, folks, I want to thank you for coming today, and remember, if I decide to run again, vote for me, Herbert Meaghan, for mayor.
If I go to church on Sunday, and I cabaret all day Monday, ain't nobody's business if I do. Well, hello there, how are you today? Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Sarah Lyle Appleton. No, I'm not buried at Forest Cemetery, but my parents are. Hugh Lyle, Dr. Hugh Lyle, and Lily Lyle Appleton. My family was very influential in the political, religious, and medical communities, but let's talk about me. I'm more interesting. Zara. Zara means ray of light or joy of parents. And indeed, I was the joy of my parents. I was the only child of Hugh and Lily. I was given the best of everything. We traveled in the best circles. I was educated, and I even drove my own vehicle in an era when most people, women, didn't even drive. But I'm supposed to tell you a little about my historical relationship with Gadsden. In the early part of the 20th century, Gadsden experienced a rash of fires. And the horse-drawn fire trucks were just not adequate. So they decided to purchase an automated combustible engine fire truck. Well, being strapped for money like all cities are always, they had to devise a way to raise the funds to purchase that fire truck. And so the plan was the citizen of Gadsden that raised the most money to purchase that fire truck would get their name emblazoned on the front. Well, being Zara, I wanted my name everywhere, so I worked diligently. And I raised enough money to purchase that fire truck. Well, on the day the fire truck arrived in Gadsden, it was a glorious day. There wasn't a lot to entertain us in that era, and everyone gathered at the fire station, and out rolled the shiny new truck, and it had Zara on the front. I was proud. But we had another rash of fires, and eventually that truck became all dented and faded, and so they put it into the shop to refurbish it. Again, we gathered to see the new refurbished truck. It rolled out, and there was a moan through the whole crowd, and my face just fell. It was beautiful, but only one thing. They had forgotten to put my name back on the front of it. The town was in an uproar, and they insisted that they put it back into the shop and put my name, and there it stayed until the truck was retired. Oh, I have another connection to the fire truck. I just couldn't get away from that thing. When the Broad Street Bridge, you call it now, the Memorial Bridge, was dedicated, the first vehicle to cross that bridge was the Zara Lyle fire truck. And can anyone tell me who might have been driving that fire truck? I was. And rumor has it I had to teach the firemen how to drive the truck. Oh, I mentioned to you that I had my own vehicle. But I forgot to mention that I was the first person, not the first woman, but the first person to own a Stutz Bearcat. I was the cat's meows, the bee's knees. I would go flying through Gadsden with my scarves flying and my hair in the wind. And then one day, this nice little policeman pulled me over and he said, "Miss Zara, do you realize how fast you were going?" I go, "Yes, officer, I do." And he said, "Well, Miss Zara, I'm going to have to give you a ticket." I said, "That's fine, officer. Can you tell me how much that's going to be?" He said, "Miss Zara, as fast as you were going, that's going to be $20. I looked at him and I said, "Officer, that's just fine, but you go ahead and make it for $40 because I'm going to be right back through here tomorrow." If I go to church on Sunday and I cabaret all day Monday, ain't nobody's business if I do.
Oh my goodness, excuse me. I was lost in thought. You see, I'm going dancing later tonight, and well, I'm trying to pick out the dress that I want to wear. All right, this one's it. Where are my manners? Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Carolyn Gunn Bellinger. Now, you may know me because my home is a few blocks east of here, and I donated it to the city at my death. I lived all my life here in Gadsden. Now, my dad was a dentist. His dad was a dentist. All my dad's brothers were dentists. They just had a passion for that field of medicine. Me, I had a passion for dancing. Oh, I danced every chance I got, everywhere. Well, it got to where that a group of friends and I held a dance every week at the old Print-Up Hotel. Now, I believe it is still standing. We held dances there, and they got to be such big affairs. People came from miles around. Now, some came just to listen to the music. Some came to dance. Some came to find someone to court. But we danced there. They became such big affairs that the country club, which was very new, approached us and asked us to please move our dances from the Print-Up to the country club. You see, they were having trouble getting people to come to that country club. So we moved there. That country club got established. We even started a dance, the Mystery Ball. And do you know they still hold that dance every year at that country club? Well, the very best thing about my dancing was I met William Clinton Bellinger. He was so handsome. Well, I called him Pete. So Pete and I began courting. And on late afternoons when we were maybe in the swing under the tree or on the front porch, I would say, Pete, what do you want to do tonight? And his answer was always the same. He always said, Carolyn, I want to dance with you. And we danced. Well, we'd been married about 4 months, and Pete got sick. He got so sick. I didn't know a body could get as sick as Pete was. Various doctors came. They put him in the hospital a couple of times, and he just could not seem to get better. Well, finally, a doctor came and said, I know what the problem is. He has appendicitis. I'll do an operation. We'll take the appendix out, and he'll be well. We were so excited, Pete and I. Well, they came. They came that morning and got Pete from his hospital bed and took him into surgery. But you see, Pete's body was so sick from fighting for 4 months to get well that he died on the operating table. They took my Pete, but they never brought him back to me. Excuse me. Well, after a while, I began to teach school at Gadsden High School. Now, some of you maybe remember me because you were in my class. Some of you may remember me just because you saw me in the hall. Some of you may remember me from the cafeteria. Some of you may remember me from my car. I drove a 1936 LaSalle to Gadsden High School. Now, during this time, people began to tell various and sundry stories about me, and they weren't really very, very flattering. I was sort of considered, let me see, a good word, quirky. I was thought to be quirky. Some of the stories involved me coming to school in dance clothes. Some of the stories involved my car. You see, I got in and out of my car on the passenger side and slid across the seat. So the story was that on our honeymoon, Pete was driving the car. The latch on the driver's door malfunctioned. That door flew open. Pete fell out and was run over and killed. Well, you know what? Pete died in 1926. My car was in 1936. You know why I got in and out on that passenger side door? Because that driver's side door had a little hitch in its latch there, and it was hard for me to open. And I saw no reason to take that car to be fixed when the other door worked perfectly well. So that rumor can be put to rest there. Well, I think possibly being a 24-year-old widow might give you cause to be considered a little bit quirky. During this time of the year, when the ground begins to loosen up a little bit, all the things that were growing and bright and producing vegetables and fruit, they've all died away. The ground is loosened up. And by doing that, it lets us connect with our spirits a little more easily. And right now they're with us. They're walking beside us. They're among us. They're around us. And I am by my Pete the most during this time of the year. Now, if you will listen, not with your ears, I want you to listen with your heart for just a minute. And if you'll do that, you'll hear the same thing that I hear. Listen, my Pete just said, Carolyn, I want to dance with you. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to just sit down right here. I'm going to hold my dancing dress, and I'm going to dance one more time with my Pete.